Yo, yo, yo. What is going on, early birds?
Good morning.
Good morning, good morning.
Morning.
All right. We're going to wait for everyone to trickle in, give everyone a few minutes. Got Alex already on the call. We'll be joined by Polygon's team, including Sandeep, the co-founder, as well as a few other family members over there. So again, we'll just give them a few minutes to trickle in, and then we'll get started. Unfortunately, I don't have any elevator music to play while we wait, so you'll just have to deal with the potential silence. In the meantime, I want to remind everyone that we will be answering some questions. And if you do want to get your question answered, just go ahead and use the comment button in the bottom right of the spaces there, which will allow you to reply directly to the spaces, and we'll get your question in. And our good friend Anwar will triage that, and then we'll get it answered. All right, so while we wait for Sandeep and the rest of the team to join, Alex, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, man. It's actually my birthday, so
Oh, happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you.
So you're like 21 now, right? Right age of 21?
Something like that.
Young
We
blood
don't talk
CEO.
about that. I'm very much a boomer in the crypto community.
It's okay. We need the stability, the contrast with Viktor the degen and Pancakes the degen, and then Alex on the team holding everything down. I think that's the dream team right there.
There you go.
All right. Looks like we're pretty much good to go. Just give a few minutes for Sandeep to join, and in the meantime, I think the best thing that we can go ahead.
Yeah, he just joined. I just sent him a co-host invite. So
amazing, perfect. All right, that means we can get started. And with that, let's get things rolling. So welcome to another edition of Spill the Alpha. This one is number 3, XCHAIN edition. If you don't know about XCHAIN, if you haven't heard of it, this is the perfect place to learn a little bit more about our huge announcement that we just released last week. We're joining forces with Polygon, who is here today. We have Sandeep from the team as well as a few other team members. And we're just going to dive into what XCHAIN is all about, what it means for IDEX, what it means for the future of the IDEX ecosystem, and really what Polygon zkEVM and the part they have to play in all this. So really, really excited to have both Alex, co-founder and CEO at IDEX, and Sandeep join me. My name is Viktor. I'll be host for today. If you don't know who I am, that's probably a good thing, but most of you do. And with that, I'll let Alex take it away.
Cool. Thank you, Viktor. Thank you, Sandeep and the Polygon team for joining today. Really appreciate you guys giving an opportunity to not only support us on the technology and product side, but also join us and tell our community and your community a little bit more about what we're working on here, collaboration, and what it means for both projects. So first, just wanted to give a few minutes of lip service to how we're thinking about this announcement, what we were looking for with XCHAIN, and why we're excited about what it can do for IDEX. As we've said before, our focus at IDEX is about really blending performance and security. We want to build an exchange that feels just like your centralized exchanges in terms of the look, the feel, the throughput, the UX, but with the key point that it doesn't require you to turn over custody of your funds. Because as we've seen, 2022 was all about counterparty risk, and we don't want to repeat the tragedies of that year. So this last week, we had a major new announcement in the introduction of XCHAIN. So this is going to be the settlement network for our upcoming Perpetuals product. A little bit more about XCHAIN specifically. So it's going to be an IDEX-specific Layer 2 network that settles into ETH L1. So you're probably familiar with a bunch of other Layer 2 networks, Polygon zkEVM being one of them, the Polygon proof of stake once it transitions to be a true L2. This is going to be similarly a layer built on top of Ethereum L1, but it's going to be specific to IDEX, and it's going to do so using Polygon's zkEVM SuperNets. We chose this solution for two primary reasons. And it kind of aligns with our goals at IDEX. The first is security. So by using ZK proofs, you can't fake transactions. It guarantees that funds on that network only move explicitly with the user's approval and that they can always get their money back at any time. So as a DEX, that's a key thing that you absolutely cannot give up on in order to provide any UX benefits, because it's just not worth it if you're sacrificing that custody, that self-custody element. But it does so by allowing us to achieve our scalability goals. In particular, what this means for the user is that we're able to offer gas-free settlement. So you no longer have to worry about the cost of settling your transactions. You only have to worry about the UX of placing and executing orders within the limit order book. So, maybe a little bit more about like kind of how we got to this point. As an order book DEX, we're very sensitive to transaction costs. And as I mentioned, our goal is to match the UX of centralized exchanges. If you notice, centralized exchanges, the settlement costs are free. That's ultimately because you're trusting them to settle your transactions and give you your money back at the time of withdrawal. So that's a tall task to be able to match them in terms of the costs, while at the same time not sacrificing on security. So this is why it's such a big deal and why it's so amazing what the Polygon team has put together, because it's a technology solution that allows us to drive costs of settlement down to the point where we can actually offer them for free to users. So you can actually get those benefits of scalability, throughput, et cetera, without having to pay those costly L1 gas fees. So this really unlocks something that we've been working on for, frankly, since our inception 6 years ago. Our focus has been on making the most performant DEX. We spent all of our time working on this high performance matching and risk engine, the key components that help us keep up with centralized exchanges. And XCHAIN is really that on-chain settlement, custody and settlement network that allows us to complete the whole package. So for me personally, this is a pretty exciting development because it's something that we've had our eye on for the entirety of the company's existence, and we're now going to be realizing with this next product launch. One last piece, a little bit just on timeline. So we're currently live on a test net that we're using for internal testing. So we've collaborated with the Polygon team to get that up and running. We've got our application and smart contracts deployed there, and we're doing all of our internal testing using an XCHAIN testnet. We'll be opening that up to the public as soon as we've validated and fixed any lingering issues with the protocol, and we aim to have the mainnet launch just a few weeks after that. So it's getting close, so just stay tuned on how to be involved in the public testnet. We'll have a lot more information coming out about that soon. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you.
Amazing. All right, I think we distilled down in pretty good way what XCHAIN is all about. Sandeep, are you there?
Yes, I'm there. I'm here.
Hello. Welcome to the Spaces. Thank you for jumping on. How are you doing today?
Thanks. My pleasure. Very excited for this.
Nice. So before I hand over the mic to you, I do want to remind everyone that if you are excited about IDEX, if you are excited about XCHAIN, just like we are, make sure to retweet this Spaces. We can get as many people in here right now. I think we're about 100 right now with a few minutes in. Let's try to get to 200, 300 before the Spaces ends, right? Let's get as many party people in here as possible. Let's get the XCHAIN vibes going. So with that, Sandeep, I know you're just as excited about XCHAIN as everyone else. Do you want to touch on your excitement a little bit here?
Absolutely. I think this is the, while you guys are starting to get, ready for the mainnet launch and all that, this will be, I think, the first ZK, secured app chain in the whole ecosystem. I don't think there is any other ZK, secured or ZK rollup or Validium secured app chain in the entire industry. So this is a big moment. And I think, I just also retweeted the Twitter Spaces handle of this particular Spaces, with saying that, why be a layer 3 when you can be a layer 2?
Exactly.
Right, and then that's the exact motto here. Like with ZK, and the kind of like, we recently talked about Polygon 2.0, which talks about a aggregator layer with which everybody can be aggregated into one single layer, one single ZK proof, so you don't have to pay the cost of putting the proofs back on Ethereum too much. So all the chains can be at a very low cost, can be layer 2s directly. What does it mean? It means that, especially for DeFi, it's very, very relevant, that because what it means is that you can directly have people from Ethereum where the actual value exists, this 60-70 billion dollar of value that is there, and the main big users are there. They can directly deposit into your chains, app chains, which are directly layer 2s from Ethereum. In case of layer 3s, they have to go to an intermediate layer 2 and then they have to deposit. Here they can deposit directly first. Second thing is, because of ZK security, the withdrawal times are super low. So, like instead of like optimistic rollups where you have to wait for 7 days for withdrawals, you can actually, withdraw your funds within like 5 minutes to 30 minutes, whatever is this thing. So, is your, proof submission latency. So that's why, like, I feel all in all, this is a super product, and we see that we already see under the hood so many of applications and teams looking for this kind of product. So very, very excited for this. And then what you guys are doing, this will become one of the key features for you guys, where you can attract the liquidity from the Ethereum chain directly.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the things I'm really, really excited about, and I think the general theme of our conversation and really kind of what we're shooting for here, is parity with centralized exchanges. And I think ultimately, beating them at their own game. And I think really what XCHAIN allows us to do in the simplest terms possible is finally be able to compete with centralized exchanges as a DEX. And so I wanted to, before we jump into some of the more, I think, interesting topics around Polygon SuperNets and kind of how that all flows in together and how the IDEX ecosystem can really take advantage of that, I wanted to know if you had any thoughts around kind of the evolution of DEXes and maybe like perpetual DEXes specifically. I know in our announcement we touched a little bit on how spot DEX volume is starting to reach that of centralized exchange volume, with I think about 20% of all spot volume now being on DEXes, whereas perpetual DEXes are only at 2%. And I think, XCHAIN is in my opinion, along with zkEVM, that sort of pivotal moment where we can finally get a huge leap from this, minuscule 2% of volume to starting to really reach what we have on the spot side.
Yeah, was that directed to me or Sandeep?
I think it's directed to everyone. I'm curious what everyone else thinks.
Yeah, before Alex jumps in, because he's already building it, so his thoughts will be obviously very positive. For me also, like I think I've been thinking, like, basically this looks like DEXes looks like currently the way we are seeing DEXes look like the end game for cryptos, eventual mainstream growth and all that, because these are bearer assets. Like, people think that, okay, more regulated exchanges will come and they will be slightly better and all that, but these crypto assets are bearer assets. Like, people many people might not be able to differentiate between these two things, that you have two different kinds of assets. Like, one is a bearer asset, that means when I have it in my pocket, it's like cash. When I have it in my pocket, it's my money, right? Whereas you have some sort of registered assets, like, for example, your stocks, where somebody is a registrar who is registering it for you, right? For example, your vehicles, which the local vehicle registration authority has registered in your name. It doesn't matter who has the key. It's still your vehicle, right? So those, with the registered assets, like all these mainstream Web 2 world is more used to these registered assets. That's why you have these big, large exchanges, clearing houses, and all that. But whereas in crypto, it's all crypto are bearer assets. Like, whoever bears them, whichever address has, they have it. And in case of like centralized exchanges, when you have to deposit those assets into the exchange starts having the custody of them. And then obviously all these bad things keep on happening, and they will keep on happening even in the future also, because there will be some top exchanges will be regulated, but they will be geography specific. And then there will still be a large number of these vague exchanges which will keep scamming people. And that's why I think that, the end game for me is like I feel that, DEXes are going to be most important. But then the current state of DEXes with AMM and all that, they don't have efficient price discovery. With the efficient price discovery happens in the centralized exchange kind of order book kind of models. And what you guys are building is actually, that's why it's like so interesting that you are essentially building a full-blown centralized exchange, but the user's fund custody, and correct me if I'm wrong, like, Alex can chime in more on that, but I think it's basically what I understand is more like I will have custody of my assets, and the orders are also being settled on chain once the order is executed on the exchange.
Right, yeah.
So essentially, this is best of both worlds. You have the speed
Exactly.
of the centralized exchanges, and you have this. So that's why I think this is like super interesting, and I would not be surprised in next 1.5 years from now, these exchanges become the most leading volume generators in the space. Alex, over to you.
Yeah, so just to build on that, we think that we're at the beginning of a shift in the complexity of types of applications that can be built utilizing blockchain networks. And to elaborate on that, blockchains are fundamentally about proving things to the world, proving things to parties that you don't trust. Historically, that has been asset ownership with the Bitcoin blockchain, who owns which UTXOs, proving the validity of transactions with the Ethereum blockchain. But it's been done at the transaction level, where every single transaction is proven and run and computed by every node in the network. And as we've seen, that doesn't scale very well. It doesn't allow for more complicated applications that require high throughput, low latency, a lot of the other things that you have become used to in just the world of computing. And if you think about a perpetuals exchange in particular, it requires a lot of computational power. There is the matching engine, which is streaming in thousands of orders a second and matching those where there's overlap, placing those on the books where there isn't. It needs a lot of computational kind of horsepower. You then have things like the risk engine and risk calculations, which are looking at users' positions based on the new index price, understanding what their margin, what their liquidation levels are. The point there is just that it's a very complex application, and it's impossible to operate it on a blockchain network itself. And so this is where something like XCHAIN is super exciting for us, because you're able to separate the part that you want to prove, which is who owns what trades occurred, and whether or not those trades were properly settled. You can separate that from the application itself, and you can get a scalable settlement mechanism that doesn't cost an arm and a leg, and allows you to match the throughput that the traditional kind of Web 2 or centralized applications have been able to provide. And I think this is going to become a blueprint or a framework for a lot of applications that historically have said, we can't utilize blockchains because X, Y, and Z reason, they don't work for our use case. I think that you're going to see that change pretty quickly over the next couple of years.
No, yeah, I think that's definitely going to be the case. And I think, like you guys both mentioned, we're really, I feel like, at this precipice where finally off-chain performance and on-chain settlement and having that ability to self-custody your funds is really at a crossroads, and we're finally able to merge those two instead of really having to choose one or the other. And I think that's really, really crucial, not only just for DEXes and products that require high performance, but I think just kind of the future of this industry as a whole, right? I think up until now we've had to create, things like DeFi primitives, which, while are super sexy and exciting, maybe they're not the best at serving a mass audience or gaining mass adoption. So I really wanted to echo your thoughts there. And before we jump into some of the next topics here, I do want to remind everyone, if you do have a question, use the reply button in the bottom right there to ask it, whether it's about IDEX, Polygon, XCHAIN, name it, we will answer it. So before we jump into the next topic, I just wanted to echo a question that we just received, because I think it's pretty relevant to what we were just talking about. One of the questions is, how decentralized is XCHAIN really? And can you compare it a little bit more to some of the current optimistic rollups out there? And what are some of the key benefits, maybe if we can rehash them, that we have over other layer 2s and other layer 3s out there?
Sure, I could speak a little bit to how we envision utilizing this technology, and then maybe Sandeep can touch on it a little bit more from kind of a broader, like, kind of multi-platform, multi-application perspective. So, to me, a lot of this stuff is all about trade-offs. As I mentioned, if you want to have every node on the Ethereum network review your transactions, that's possible today. It's going to be very expensive. It doesn't allow for something like a perpetuals exchange to operate on ETH-L1, right? There's a reason that product doesn't exist there. So it is definitely about trade-offs. And in this case, the things that you're trading off are really about the ability for other applications to live on top of it. So we're really focused on making this network IDEX specific. The focus is on settling transactions that come from our perpetuals platform and any other applications that we see that can help facilitate activity with the IDEX exchange. So that's going to be things like bridges and potentially other DeFi-focused Dapps in the future. But by limiting the types of applications that can be operated on the network, you're able to focus it on the UX that we believe our users care about. So you've probably had the situation where you were trying to get a transaction through and some unrelated NFT drop or token launch or something else in the ecosystem was happening at the same time, and it drove up your costs and made it expensive to get transactions through. So that's one of the things that we're able to address by having an IDEX specific chain is we're able to remove those kind of third-party impacts from the settlement costs of our own network.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think that answered the question well. Sandeep, you want to add anything there?
No, I think Alex fully covered it. Yep.
Okay, awesome. So while you still have the mic there, Sandeep, why don't we touch a little bit more on like the SuperNet's vision and maybe how IDEX plays into that? I think one of the things that's really, really exciting is this ability to have basically seamless movement of both funds and I think ultimately users from all the different products that are aligned with zkEVM and are built on that technology.
Yep. So basically, it stems from the fact that we have discussed with Polygon 2.0, right? And essentially, what that means is like what we have said that what we set out to build is this value layer of internet. And when you say value layer of internet, currently the internet that you see is the internet of information, internet of data, right? Like the internet that we are using. Like we can create, share, exchange this information that we are all generating very seamlessly, right? Like and like the network is actually interconnected. Like for example, if you go long back, like you would have these different segregated networks like DARPANET in US and Euronet in Europe and various different kind of things. And then came internet, which actually unified all these internets. And then today, if I am, let's say, sitting in somewhere in UAE, I can be accessing a government site which is hosted in UAE. And then in the same browser, I am actually accessing a website, let's say Twitter, which is hosted somewhere in the US and things like that. It's all seamless. Whereas if you see what is the situation with blockchains today, the layer 1 blockchain Ethereum is super slow because obviously you can't have all the everything, all the traffic in one place. So you have these layer 2 chains and other layer 1s and all that, and you have to bridge the value. So you have to first manually bridge the value. We have to trust somebody else, some bridge in between. Then the value goes to the layer 2, and then there you do something which is also not scalable enough and all that. So if you compare it with the overall internet, the internet of information, and with Web3, what we are building is internet of value. It needs to have the same values or same features like the internet of information. It needs to be seamless. It needs to be infinitely scalable. And again, like in terms of the value, it needs to have the unified liquidity. Just like the information is seamless in the internet, the liquidity in this case should be unified, right? And you should be able to spin up as many chains like as you guys are spinning. I anticipate by the end of this year itself, I see somewhere between 50 to 100 Polygon chains, and you will see like built on Polygon SuperNets and all that. And then all of them, and essentially technically from there on you can set up like thousands, 10,000, 20,000 chains. As much capacity you need, you can do it. But what happens is that then the liquidity and composability gets fragmented, right? So for that we have this aggregator layer which we are building, which is again built on top of zero knowledge technology. So all these chains, including the X chain from IDEX, they will all prove into this aggregator layer, which will kind of then do a recursive proof combined proof of all the chains and then submit on Ethereum. First, it will reduce the cost for all these chains. But secondly, because all of the chains now know the ZK proof of other chain, they can easily now see that what is happening, and if there is a cross-chain transaction, they can be 100% sure of it. They know, like for example, if some user was trading a particular token on IDEX exchange, and I converted it, let's say in some, I bought some token from there, and which now I want to sell, but there is not enough liquidity, but there is more liquidity on the Polygon zkEVM public chain, right? So in one click of a button and within like 30 to 60 seconds, I should be able to, without me knowing it as a user, my asset should be able to go to the zkEVM chain, get swapped, let's say there on QuickSwap or Uniswap or whatever DEX is there, and then I should get the USD back on my let's say IDEX chain. So this composability. So in this case, even if you have thousands of chains, all those chains will almost feel like one single chain. When I say 30 to 60 seconds, it's almost like you are interacting on Ethereum. So that kind of unified liquidity and seamless value for the users moving across multiple chains is what we are trying to achieve, and with the aggregator layer, it will be possible. And because of the technology, that the ZK technology that we have built, for example, Plonky 3, which does like extremely fast, like I think currently it's 100x faster than any other protocol in terms of doing the recursive proofs. So all the ZK technology and the infrastructure parts that we built in the last 1.5 years, they all are now getting combined into creating these amazing, technology for scalability and interconnectivity.
Awesome, yeah.
Yeah, and just to add in, this is part of what attracted us to this particular technical solution. I think perpetuals, as a perpetuals DEX, we are, relative to other DeFi products, it's not as important to be atomically composable with other applications. And what I mean by that is, a liquidity pool, swap platform, it's very important that it can be plugged into lending platforms so that collateral can be immediately liquidated in one atomic transaction. Like, that's just very important to being able to facilitate other applications within the ecosystem. Whereas a perpetuals platform, the margin, the liquidations, all of that is self-contained within the protocol. So our primary focus at the beginning was something that is scalable and can support the primary use case of operating this perpetuals protocol. But as we look towards the future, the goal is for IDEX users on the platform to then have access to and the ability to seamlessly interact with all of the rest of crypto. Just like if you deposit on a centralized exchange today, you're kind of cut off from the ecosystem. A big selling point is that we don't want to have that happen with our app chain and application. Just because you're there to use IDEX perpetuals doesn't mean that you shouldn't be able to connect seamlessly with everything else that's going on in the DeFi ecosystem. And this vision and this future will allow us to offer that to IDEX users. So a key part of why we're really excited about this.
100%. So one of the things that Sandeep, you touched on was essentially how right now you're almost at the culmination of all the work that Polygon has been putting into the network and the protocols that are built on top of it. And we're finally at this sort of turning point where Polygon is starting to really become the value layer of the internet. But you had a pretty early start, as did IDEX. So I guess, Alex, one of the things I wanted to hear a little bit more on is, one, what do you think are the direct benefits of settling to Ethereum directly? And how do you think our vision from the very early beginnings of IDEX is now finally being realized now with XCHAIN?
Sure. So maybe I'll take that second one first. We learned about the importance of scalability, especially with an order book model, early on in December 2017, when CryptoKitties was one of the very first, at least the first I recall, example of a single application bringing the entire network to a crawl, right? It was one of the very first times that gas really spiked up. People had difficulty getting transactions through. All the infrastructure was tested at one time. And it really opened our eyes to the need to having a scalable settlement network, and ideally one that allows us to be insulated from all of the activity that's going on elsewhere on the chain. Now, at the same time, we took a look at a lot of different solutions that came up, including different L1 networks that promised to address issues with scalability by coming in with a different model, a different design. But every time we looked at them, we ran into a host of consistent issues, whether that was redesigning our application to do a non-EVM kind of model or a different programming language than Solidity, or fragmenting and pulling ourselves away from the network effect and the liquidity that had developed around ETH-L1. It's by far the biggest, most secure in terms of smart contract capable networks, in terms of the value that it's securing. There really is no second best, as Saylor likes to say. So from my perspective, this is kind of the culmination of our early vision, which was how do we get that settlement efficiency and cost that our application needs while not being disconnected or removed from everything that's happening, the ecosystem and kind of the core of this composable DeFi network, which is Ethereum layer 1. So you have the ability to bridge directly from ETH-L1. You can bring all of that liquidity over, and then you have the settlement guarantees in terms of the settlement of the ZK network going back to ETH-L1. So it doesn't get more secure. It doesn't get more liquid. It really is everything we've been looking for.
Amazing. Awesome answer. All right, so we've got about 20, 30 minutes left here in the space. I want to shoot a quick reminder to everyone to please retweet. Let's get as many people in here as possible. And if you have a question, bottom right, there is a button. Press it, and you'll be able to ask said question, and we will be able to answer it. Very innovative. All right, so let's get into the first question here that just came in. I think it'll be pretty interesting. From a very broad perspective, what kind of use cases and adoption will this sort of partnership between Polygon zkEVM and IDEX, what kind of use cases and adoption will it deliver?
So, I mean, added service, this is enabling us to offer the application we've been trying to offer from the beginning, right? So I don't know if that's exactly what the question was directed towards, but centralized exchange performance with decentralized custody and settlement, right? It's pretty simple. It's centralized exchanges have a great product, except for the fact that you have to give them your money. How do we solve it? This is how, with the technology we developed and the technology that Polygon developed, putting the two together.
Got it. Makes sense. I think maybe Hamza or Sandeep, do you want to add anything else in terms of what you can kind of see between Polygon and IDEX and how that partnership will begin to grow and develop?
Victor, can you repeat the question? Like, was that for?
Oh, so sorry. Yeah. So the question was essentially, what kind of use cases and adoption will this partnership between Polygon zkEVM and IDEX, what kind of use cases and adoption can we expect it to deliver in some sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think as Alex was also saying that this chain is dedicated for the IDEX, per exchange to run, and it will be initially focused on that. But I also discussed that we are working on some features wherein IDEX DAO will also have the capability to choose which basically applications get to deploy on top of that. So another very this can be, let's say, when IDEX the exchange is able to attract like hundreds of millions of dollars in liquidity, and most of the time when I'm not as a user, I'm not doing an order, my liquidity is just land.
It's not doing anything for you.
Yeah, and then maybe in this same breath, IDEX themselves can launch, let's say, an existing fork of a lending borrowing protocol where I can say that I'm going to, whenever my liquidity is there, allow it for lending and borrowing and things like that, so I can earn more yields and all that. And there can be endless such use cases, and I'm pretty sure this will enable you to eventually launch a kind of a development toolkit on top of it, where you can invite other DeFi builders on top of the liquidity generated by IDEX.
No, yeah, I completely agree. And just to add a little bit on top of that, when IDEX first brought up the idea of XCHAIN to me, for me as a trader, one of the most exciting things was, I'll deposit collateral onto a perps exchange, and whatever I'm not using it for orders is sort of just sitting there, right? And it's a lot of work to move it into some sort of earn program. There's usually some sort of lockup anyway, so it's not like you can move it in there for 18 hours, go to sleep, wake up and trade again and move it out. And so one of the most exciting things for me was having this sort of ability for the exchange to basically offer you, an opportunity to do something with that liquidity or that collateral that you added on while you're not using it, right? And I think once I started to really think about it, it became pretty clear that, from a centralized exchange perspective, they build all their own micro products and have to manage the earn program, all the yield programs, the NFT marketplaces. You have all these different kind of components and modules, which seems like a huge headache. But when you have something like XChain, I think one of the huge advantages that you really have is you can have a lot of different teams come on and deploy their product that will serve IDEX users and serve IDEX collateral. So whether that's a borrow lending protocol that will mimic sort of what centralized exchanges are able to do with the earn programs, or maybe someone like STFX can come on and deploy their trading competition protocol so that someone like IDEX, we don't have to create our own, right? And I think having this sort of ability to just bring on teams that are able to service your users with different sort of offerings and value props is a lot more powerful than essentially doing everything yourself as a centralized exchange. So before I jump into the next question, Alex, you want to add anything else to that, Hamza?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Hey, what's up? Welcome to the Dream Team.
I'm good. Yeah, thank you. One thing which also I'm not sure Alex and you guys are thinking about, but like one interesting way to maybe increase capital efficiency is also to have like a DAI or a USDC instead of just USDC. So people can just have yield on top of their idle collateral.
Yeah.
Stuff like that can be done, especially. And I also saw Pancake asking that question. Maybe I'll answer it directly. Is that how will you ensure that enough liquidity will be there? So there are a lot of bridges, and there are a lot of now this one standard which I personally very like is like ERC-4626, where you can wrap the existing A tokens or whatever C tokens, any yield tokens, and make them bridgeable, which is a very interesting thing. And we have not seen that much use cases there. But I think with this multi roll-up world, you can easily see because like trading apps do not require a lending. I mean, it is difficult to have a whole lending market on every chain. So what I think Aave will or like other lending markets will be is like you can move a DAI to other chains and use that as collateral.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Instead of moving Aave to that particular chain, because there is security and there is a big risk of bridge and all that. So that kind of stuff I think makes it very composable, even if you don't really want it, but it just helps.
No, yeah, I definitely agree. And I think it's a perfect segue actually for the next question, which I think is more suited for Alex. And the question is, how are we planning to ensure that XChain has a high amount of liquidity, and how are we really thinking about both the bridging process, but also the super critical onboarding process?
Sure. So I'll start with the bridging process and caveat this with it's still, we're still actively working on this and developing it, so it may change. But the way we're thinking about it is kind of two components. There is the canonical bridge, as it's called, the bridge that is baked into the use of a ZK SuperNet. This is the bridge to bring assets from ETH-L1 into our network. So that's going to be like bridging to pretty much any other L2 that you've used. You will deposit the funds into the L1 contract, and they will be minted and usable on the IDEX XChain L2. One of the very cool things about the bridge functionality is that the XChain bridge and I guess the L1 deposit contract is shared by all other Polygon zk SuperNet and Polygon zk products. So you will then have a shared deposit contract that allows you to do L2 to L2 transactions without going back to the layer 1. So an example would be going from XChain to Polygon's zkEVM, either the Validium or the on-chain data version, or to any other Polygon zk SuperNet in the future. So that's one thing that's going to make the bridging process really seamless, because I believe that more and more over time, people are going to live predominantly on L2s, and L1s are going to be used for proving what happened on L2, less and less for L1 based transactions. The other piece is we've been talking with a few different bridge providers about having them deploy their application directly on XChain, which will allow us to integrate with L2s and other EVM networks that are outside of the Polygon SuperNet network. So the goal being that regardless of where you are in the EVM ecosystem, you have one transaction deposit and you're good to go. You've bridged, you're deposited, you're in the application, and you're ready to trade. And then, sorry, remind me of the first part of the question.
Yeah, just before I get into the second part, I just want to clarify. So when you say you can potentially deposit from anywhere, theoretically, if I have some USDC on Avalanche, I'll be able to deposit that onto IDEX and actually use it as collateral for trading.
That's exactly right. And there's some cool technology developments that, without going into detail, allow you to have one transaction that can then be used to do multiple steps. So from a user's perspective, you have you come to the application, you say, hey, I've got some USDC on Avalanche. I want to move it and deposit it to the IDEX Perpetuals exchange. A few minutes later, your money's in the platform and you're ready to go. So for us, it's really about abstracting away the level of complexity, frustration, UX, et cetera, that has been created out of necessity, right? As we try to scale these things, it's fragmented. And now it's about how can we use the latest developments in technology to smooth over those issues and make it more unified so that, to Sandeep's point, it shouldn't really matter where your money is if it's in a blockchain that can talk to one another, right? And so that's the ultimate goal, is to make it so that from a user's perspective, they've got money, it's in the app, they're ready to go.
Got it. Yeah, the second part of the question is essentially how we're really thinking about the onboarding experience. And for me personally, I think it's really, really top of mind and something that I've been focusing a lot of my time on. And, I could go on about it endlessly, but I think you'd be probably better suited to summarize it in a few minutes here. But how are we really thinking about, from a standpoint of having parity and competing with centralized exchanges, how are we thinking about our onboarding process?
Sure. So, centralized exchanges, I think one thing is they've made a very good product, right? It has billions of users. People generally like it, except for the security risk. But the security risk is this kind of latent risk for most users. It's not something that drives them to figure out a clunky UX. People came on chain in 2020 because that's where the new assets were. That's where the NFTs were.
Yeah, that's where the alpha was.
People were forced to learn it. Exactly. They were forced to learn it because that's where the opportunity was. So we've got a bit of a different challenge where people are generally pretty happy with the centralized exchange UX. The problem is this kind of latent security concern, right? But you really have to help them get over the hump. And to do that, we think you have to match that experience, which is, hey, I show up, I've got some money, I send it, and I'm ready to go. So we want to make it that UX, but even better. You plug in your wallet, we identify where your money is, we help you sign those single transaction, and you're off and ready to go. So we think that making that level of onboarding, on par with the ease that you see in traditional applications, and even surpassing it, because it's just show up with a wallet, sign a transaction, and go, it is really going to be critical to getting that massive adoption. Another feature, just to plug real quick, is this concept of delegated keys. But the basic idea is that we've created a method where you don't have to break out your hardware or your software wallet every time you make a trade or every time you want to sign a transaction. So we've created a way that you can securely trade from within your browser. It's going to feel just like a centralized exchange, but be ultimately secured by your hardware or software wallet. So I think it's those little touches that, when you add it all together, create that application that looks and feels like something everybody's familiar with, which is what's going to allow it to kind of reach that next level of adoption and really overtake what we've seen on the centralized exchange side.
Yeah, 100% I agree. I think onboarding is definitely the first step, but having things like gas-free trading and delegated keys, which essentially allow you to trade without signing every single transaction, is really what's going to bring us up to par with centralized exchanges and hopefully really allow us to capture a lot of that market share, because realistically, I think that, the counterparty risk of trusting someone like Sam or CZ versus trusting code just seems much, much, much higher. So I'll jump into the next question here, and it'll be a little bit more open-ended. I'll actually give it to the floor, anyone who wants to take a stab at answering it. I think it's super interesting. The question is, isn't full decentralization too risky? What do we think about having a centralized aspect in some of these DApps? And I think, as a product that has a hybrid design with this on-chain settlement and custody, but off-chain trading engine, I think we might be, the perfect people to speak to this. So Alex, maybe I'll let you take a stab at it first, and then we'll hear from Hamza and Sandeep and see if they have any thoughts.
Yeah, sure. It's a great question, and like I honestly don't know the final answer to it. I mean, I can just kind of talk to some of the pros and cons that I've seen. So a great example is, if you think about the goal of an exchange like IDEX, it's to allow buyers and sellers to be matched together, but in a way where they don't have to lose their funds, right? So not every action has to be on a blockchain for that to be possible. One example of an area where we've chosen to not operate it on a blockchain network is the matching engine. If you think about the role of a matching engine in an exchange, it's to bring together those buyers and sellers, and it does so by figuring out who was there first and who's willing to offer a better price. And now there are on-chain versions of this process, but in speaking with market makers, they actually do not like using those versions because it means that the validators who are operating the network now have a form of MEV that they can extract by being the order book operator. They have the ability to selectively include certain transactions. They have the ability to determine whose orders are going to be matched, whether or not they're going to process that cancellation that just came through. So in an odd way, decentralization actually allows for more it decreases the consumer protection, if you will, because you now have this group of anonymous actors that can kind of interfere with orderly.
Yeah, in some sense, they like see the future.
In this case. Exactly. They're getting the same off-chain information as others, but they have the ability to selectively include or exclude others' transactions as well as their own, right? And so it's this double-edged sword, right? Decentralization means that there's no one central party performing that process. In some cases, like custody, that's really good, right? Like I think we've seen the risk of having a single custodian. Time and time again, we've run into issues, right? We want that process to be decentralized where every individual is in control of their own destiny. Or I should say, has the choice, right? We know that some people are going to choose custodians, but you should be able to opt in or out. You should have self-custody if you want it. On the flip side, things like order matching, we have yet to see a solution that is decentralized that also protects users and keeps the benefits of what we see with a matching engine process. So like everything, not always black and white.
Yeah, very, very fair. I think that's a great answer. Hamza, anything you want to add to that?
I don't think I can add anything to that eloquent answer. I think there is much to be added because yes, like every type of protocol, every vertical of protocol, whether it is a layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, or a protocol, and even or DeFi protocol. And DeFi also, you have different levels of it. Like you have a lending, then you have perps and all this, and for decentralization for every business, so to say, or app is very different. So like now we have now come to the conclusion that Ethereum is the most decentralized neutral layer 1. Let's go next step. Like, okay, what is the next step? Then there is censorship resistant and all these things. Then zk is the the next L2, and then now with zk you can have a lot of these processing on chain. So sometime down the line, there is one project that is doing on chain order book, like fully on chain order book. They have optimized some code. It is very early stage, but they are trying to have it all on chain. So I hope traders like that, and of course, but in the end, like superior product will win. But of course, it's just a progressive. I think we, especially at Polygon, like we started as a POS chain, which is not fully decentralized and whatnot. But still, sorry, not it was fully decentralized in terms of it's the most decentralized bridge, at least in terms of 100 validators and all. But it is just a progressive, gradual decentralization. You can't just go all in and lose the business, lose the business sense and just give it to the community from day zero. I think that's just my personal thing, and that's what I've learned in the past 2 years. And it's a very business first thing. It's
Cool. Yeah. No. Great answer. Appreciate you chiming in for sure. This next question, and then we can start to look at wrapping up. I think this one is best suited for Alex. Alex, what are our plans to get liquidity and volume on IDEX?
Sure. So we've got a few different programs. I'll just kind of maybe run through them. So if you think about the platform, it's a two-sided marketplace. You need market makers to show up and provide liquidity, but you also need takers to show up and take that liquidity, or else market makers won't stick around for long, right? There's an opportunity cost of capital to being in the market, to quoting, and so you really need both of those groups to show up together at the same time. So we've got a few things in the works. We've been discussing directly with market makers to have a few engagements where they're present on day one, providing liquidity in the books. We will have a open to the public participation market making program where anyone can provide liquidity and earn some IDEX tokens in exchange for providing that liquidity. Those market makers will be measured on essentially how good is that liquidity. It's a combination of spread, depth, and uptime. And so we have a formula that will analyze the order books and reward those that are providing better liquidity than others. And then lastly, we're going to have market maker rebates. So users will actually be able to get paid a rebate in terms of fees for providing liquidity on the books. So even if you just aren't a professional market maker, but you place limit orders, if those limit orders get hit, you'll actually earn a fee rather than paying a fee to the protocol. So that's kind of on the liquidity side. Then on the taker side, Viktor will probably have more to say in the future, as I know we're keeping a few of these up our sleeves. But the goal is about getting a bunch of users there on day one to actually participate in that two-sided market. So things like trade rewards, first trade bonuses, a lot of creative things we're doing on the community side to target particular users in the crypto space to get them onto the platform and to try all at the same time.
Amazing. So we've got a market maker program, we've got maker rebates, got trading rewards, trade bonuses. I mean, I think we're stacked. I don't know. I think day one we might have all the users in the world.
Well, you should also talk more about the community, quote unquote, side of things.
Yeah, no, I would love to do that. I mean, I think when you really look at CT and you scroll through your feed, there's absolutely zero chance that you don't see a GOAT in your timeline. I think it's pretty clear at this point that IDEX has become CT's darling, and whether you know about the product or not, you definitely know about the brand. And I think the team here has done an incredible job of really, I think, just being natural, right, and our authentic selves. And I think that's why we've been able to be so successful. We don't force marketing. We don't shill our token. We don't do anything that I think a lot of the other projects that have had, some initial success but have fallen off drastically. And I think that's really part of the reason why we've grown to both, an impeccable size, but also our community is as strong as loyal and ever. And I think one of the things that we're really looking forward to, and I can share a little bit of alpha here at the end of the day, it is called Spill the Alpha. We have 170, 180 people that have stuck around all the way to the end of this. So I'll spill a little bit of alpha, maybe keep it to yourselves for now, but the testnet beta is coming soon. Obviously, one of our key goals is to make sure we use that time to squash any remaining bugs before mainnet launch, but also really get that product in the hands of super users, like people who trade, every week, every day, people on CT that are posting P&L charts, people on CT that are posting, price charts. And I think really our goal is to make sure that they're as engaged as possible during that time and really help us, figure out what is the perfect product for traders on CT, right? I think when we really think about who's going to be the first one to use this product and who's going to be there month 2, month 3, really starting to use it a lot. And I think it's going to be traders on CT, including myself, right? So really trying to figure out what are those some final touches that we need to put into place. So with that said, I think you'll probably start to see a few announcements here from the team. I can't say any dates just yet, but I will say that if you are interested in both participating in the testnet and getting your hands on the product early on and helping us really figure out what does that end vision look like, I will say join Discord, make sure you're in there, make sure you put the notification bell on for the Twitter, for the IDEX Twitter account, and just keep your eyes peeled. I think we have something really, really exciting, and I don't think many other protocols have done it. And I'm trying not to leak too much here. I'm getting some DMs from the marketing team telling me to stop, so I'll kind of leave it there. But I will say that it's going to be really exciting. There will be swag involved. There will be other rewards involved. And I think if you're one of the lucky participants of this beta, you're going to be very, very happy both with participating in it, but also just being part of the IDEX community. So with that said, before we wrap up here, again, spill the alpha in the name. So Sandeep, Hamza, Alex, anything you want to spill to the community? It doesn't have to be IDEX related. Doesn't have to be Polygon related. Any alpha is acceptable.
Miladies.
Wow, that was
From my side, like I just want to drop this alpha that watch out for Polygon zkEVM DeFi. It's going to explode.
Wow. Okay. I haven't heard about that one. I'll have to check it out.
No idea what that is.
Sounds really intriguing.
Cool. Nothing to add from my end. Just again, wanted to reiterate my thanks to the Polygon guys for showing up. Really appreciate all your support, both publicly and behind the scenes. They've been amazing partners. And I do think, like I said at the top of this, that we're early to a trend here. I think a lot of other applications are going to find a lot of value in what they're providing, and excited to be part of a growing network of ZK SuperNets.
Amazing. Well, again, huge thank you to everyone for coming by. Alex, as always, thank you for stopping by and giving us your time. I know you're a busy man. Hamza, Sandeep, likewise, thank you so much for coming by. To summarize some of our thoughts, don't forget to join Discord. Our public testnet is soon, where you'll get finally a chance to get your hands on the IDEX product and really help us build the decentralized exchange that will compete with centralized exchanges, and I think, in my opinion, have a very good chance at winning. Alex, happy birthday again. Hope you have an amazing day. And everyone else, we'll catch up soon. Thanks for coming by.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.